So I bought a GoPro from Best Buy and I had a backpack and I started filming these wrestling shows and there was like absolutely nothing in my backpack, but I just wanted to give the illusion that like I was serious about what I
I
was
like it.
doing and that I could potentially have something in his backpack that would be more than just the GoPro that I had in my hand.
All right, so welcome back to the latest episode of Game Day Glare. My name's E. I'm again, as usual, with my boy Lance, but today we do have a special guest. So, Lance, first of all, how are you doing? And second of all, why don't you introduce our super special guest?
All right. So today we have John Gray, the lead videographer of Thunder Vision. Now, I was lucky enough to meet John quickly last year when he was in Montreal doing a Thunder game in Montreal. We didn't get much time to chat because John was too busy running around with his camera trying to get as much B-roll as he could of Montreal as was a quick turnaround. So we tried to set this podcast up for a while, but you know, when you're going deep in playoff runs and you have a busy season as the number one team in the Western Conference in the NBA, it was kind of hard to schedule this podcast. So I'm thank you, John, for coming on and finding the time. We know it's not easy during the middle of the season. Now you're on All-Star break right now. So how's your season been so far?
Yeah, first off, thanks for having me. And it was great to get some time with Lance in Montreal and now some time with E. So really appreciate you guys having me on.
Oh, thank you.
The question was, what's it like? What's the season like so far?
Yeah.
It's unreal. I come from hockey. Arizona Coyotes was my last venture. And so a little bit different of a situation there. This year is wild in the sense that if we lose, it feels way off. But the team is on track and we're all just excited about how we look this year and taking advantage of a winning season. So it's just a great environment and we're all really excited about it.
Well, we're big fans too. A lot of Canadians on that team, so
Let's go.
We could talk to some of those Canadian boys and see if they can help get you a ring there, John. Because I mean, last year you guys had a great playoff run. You went really, really deep. And honestly, I think this year you guys look even better. So
it's going to be interesting. Yeah. We all work in sports, so we all know anything can happen. But like I said, it's just really exciting to be around an environment like this right now.
Yeah. Well, speaking of working in sports, that was going to be my first question. Like, did you get into sports videography like from the start? Did you know that's what you wanted to do, or were you just like happy to be in video and just sort of fell into it? Like, how did that happen?
Yeah, I have such a roundabout way of making my way into videography and sports in specific. I got out of college with a political science degree and really wanted nothing to do with that. I was going to be a lawyer. I didn't have enough patience to go through more school. So I kind of was like lost in what I was going to do. And everyone told me, you're young, you should chase your dream. And like, I don't even know what my dream really is. But I knew that I like professional wrestling. So my passion for that, I had called like a independent wrestling company in Colorado where I was living and said, I want to work for you guys. What can I do? I'll do anything and I'll do it for free. And the guy was like, well, we're really hurting for video and content. We don't have any video or anything like that. So I was like, okay, I think I can help. And I drove home like, what am I going to do? So I bought a GoPro from Best Buy and I had a backpack and I started filming these wrestling shows and there was like absolutely nothing in my backpack, but I just wanted to give the illusion that like I was serious about what I was doing and that I could potentially have something in his backpack that would be more than just the GoPro that I had in my hand. And through doing that, I like caught the bug of videoing and editing. And I didn't know like how eclectic the wrestling world was for a videographer to like hone his skills. But we were doing like live matches. So now we're putting stuff live on YouTube and all the work that goes into that, doing hype edits, which is really what I caught on to loving. And then doing like promos or any of the green screen work. Like it was almost like its own mini media day every time we did one of those. And I had no idea that like I was starting to craft some skills that I'd be able to use later on, which was really cool. But I kind of ventured away from wrestling and into music videos. So music videos were really popular uh, when I was coming up. They still are, but there was just a lot of artists in Denver that needed music videos. So I was lucky enough to kind of fit into this world in Denver where there was some videography going on and young cats that were kind of like me with no schooling and just going after it. And the competition was always in the edit. Like all of us could shoot, but it was like, how cool was your edit? So I really started to dial in the editing aspect in the music video side of the world. So that's kind of like my background of like what I was doing in videography before I got to sports, and we can wait for some more questions to kind of go in.
Well, I have so many more questions now after hearing how that started. First off, shout out to GoPro because GoPro got you started. Now,
I mean, it was the cheapest entry level thing that I could get into, and it was a video camera, so it worked.
but it goes to show you that you can make it with any camera as long as you
Absolutely.
learn how to use that camera and you have a vision with that camera. So because he always has people on his YouTube asking, what camera should I buy, or what about this camera? And you kind of try and point them to whatever their budget is, but at the end of the day, just shoot. And you're a prime example of that. Like you were filming green screen promotions with a GoPro.
Yeah, I mean, and no
And
lights, like house lights, and learning that
Jeez.
lights change everything in a green screen. And like that was how I learned videography, was trying things that didn't work, and they always didn't
Yeah.
work, which was great
Trial
for
and
me.
error.
Yeah.
yeah,
No,
because I
but
can't imagine chroma keying a green screen with no lights in a GoPro. Like,
32 different shades of green. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Jeez.
wow. Okay,
Can't be easy.
so what was that key project or that big moment that helped you start propelling you towards pro sports? Like, yes, wrestling is a pro sport, but I'm talking about an actual one of the 4 major pro sports.
I grew up playing lacrosse. It was a brand new sport in Denver. So we were some of the first kids that were playing lacrosse in the state and just fell in love with it. I had a buddy um, who was working with the NLL and the Mammoth, and he said, I see the music videos. Do you want to come out and just shoot a game just for fun? And I was like, absolutely. Um, and that was like the aha. If I put the music video world and the sports world together, I have such a passion for both. It was like so natural to go that way. And so I shot a game, delivered the footage that night. That was always my thing, was to cut stuff and deliver it right away. I learned that was a huge asset early on, and made sure that was always like a part of what I was doing, is delivering video quick. Um, but I flipped that, and it just turned into like a totally different experience after I was getting those opportunities to turn in those videos. Like they were using it online. So I was like seeing my work being applied. The only thing that sucked was it was literally the day before COVID shut the world down.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So like I had left the stadium, gave high fives to the media director, like everything's great. We're going to bring you back. I'm on the phone with my parents. Like, I think this could be something. And then we stayed inside for a couple of years.
Yeah. Jeez. Talk about timing.
Yeah, it was weird, but it was good because it gave me an opportunity to like settle and say, okay, if this is what I'm going to go after, what are my next plans of action? And because the world wasn't moving at a huge fast pace, I was able to be very calculated during that time.
So you're working on your editing and try to like build like a portfolio maybe? Like what was your strategy?
It was unique in the sense that I was getting more jobs than I was before, but I was getting a lot of corporate meetings and like Zoom calls where they're,
Yeah.
asking to drop lower thirds and just make it a little cooler than what it looks like on Zoom. But I think those are good editing tasks to have because if you can make a corporate meeting look fun and engaging and exciting, then Shea driving down the lane with a 360 dunk is no problem. So
Yeah. That's true. That's a good point. And you also need that sort of corporate. You need to be able to have that corporate sort of look when necessary, because it's not all, I'm sure not everything you do for the Thunder is just highlight reels and game recaps. Like there's other like things like related to sponsors or things like that where you need to have that knowledge of how to present in a more corporate way, I guess.
I think people get hung up on the hype edit a lot and they just, they're really dialed on those. But like you said, you can show some range in your work when you're doing things like that. And ultimately, that's what's going to make your portfolio look really appealing over, someone who's just really good at the hype video.
Yeah, no, exactly. So how did you get to the Thunder then? How did you go from lacrosse to the NBA?
Well, I did corporate stuff to bridge the gap. So I was working a lot of corporate while I was sending thousands of applications to teams. And I was using Teamworks online and just I was applying for everything that had a camera involved. So like I knew I was not going to be the video coach for the Maple Leafs,
Okay.
but I knew that like if it was even going to start a conversation of who I could talk to, that it was worth putting it out, and not like in a bothersome way of like this is the 80th time someone sent me an application for the wrong job. My cover letters were super direct. Like I know what this job is, and I just want you to know that I'm knocking on the door of your organization on all doors. So you may talk to somebody that you work with and they're going to know that I sent 4 applications last week, but I just really wanted it that bad. And lucky enough, Arizona called and gave me my first opportunity. So
You got up and you moved to Arizona to start working with the Coyotes, just like
yeah,
that.
it was like a 2-week thing. It was like pack all this stuff up and head to Arizona. I started probably 2 weeks into the 21-22 season.
So after
So
the bubble.
they had
Uh,
already started going. Yep. Interesting time to join a team that is already kind of rolling, but the people that I met there and our crew was amazing. I learned everything that I needed to take into the professional world because I was learning so much you can only learn so much on your own until someone starts showing you like this stuff works if you use it this way. And I never
Hmm.
even knew that existed. So
the hands-on experience really helped then. Like, so what, like color, you're talking like color grading,
color
editing
all the
techniques.
way.
Yeah.
Color all the way. I mean, I feel like as an editor, you either have like the natural ability to pace a video and make it feel, like I feel like that comes from a lot of natural talent, but the stuff that you can dial in mathematically, color, L cuts, fades, dives, like all of that stuff has a rhyme and a reason to it. And I really enjoy like learning the technicalities of why people do things the way they do because it's been taught that way. And I also like to really disrupt that world too. So, um, but yeah, learning as much as I could from them was awesome, and I owe it to the boys at the Yotes. My guy Vince and Wes and Nate, those guys all took care of me.
Is it a big team? And they like NHL teams? Are there like is it like is there a few of you guys like just working specifically on the video side of things?
I don't know about every team. I know that at the Coyotes we were a small team servicing everything, so we were doing long form, short form, um, sponsorship, all of it. And then in the NBA at the Thunder, we're a much bigger organization. So you're much more dialed into your niche of work, which there's upsides to both, and I enjoy both. But the Coyotes was something that was like you kind of had your hands on everything and all hands on deck.
So how did you get traded from the NHL to the NBA? How did that happen then?
Yeah, I just want to say that everyone at the Coyotes, like in the organization, was absolutely great. The people we worked with, some things that were happening that are uncontrollable, way, way above you, started to kind of pester some employees. I could tell it was my time to go. It just didn't feel like there was longevity that was happening.
Good call, I guess, right?
Yeah,
Because you'd be in Utah right now.
it's a decent forecast. You get lucky every once in a while, right? But Chadwick Folkstead, who hired me at Arizona, also had some connections with some people at the Thunder. And so I had let him know that I had applied and was getting interviewed. And along with Chadwick vouching for me, I was able to get an interview. And it was a long interview process. Like 3 or 4 interviews and then a couple of edit tests. So I was really excited about the edit tests. I grew up a basketball fan, so it was fun to like finally touch some basketball footage that was really pro.
That's cool. And also, like, I was gonna ask because obviously every time you had a new job, you had to move.
Yeah.
So would you say that that's something that like a sports videographer in the US anyway, that's kind of part of the deal that like you probably, unless you get very lucky, that probably implies that you're gonna have to move around.
I mean, I have a really supportive family and like luckily one of the like best support groups around me. So to pick up and move is really, really difficult. Like the first time was exciting and fun, and so that kind of shades a little bit of the rough spots that go on when you move. This move was tough just because you're going to a brand new place and you don't have the friend group, or like I don't have family that lives here, but my parents live in Texas, so it was a closer move to family, which helped a lot. And then my girlfriend's so supportive that she's like, it doesn't matter where, just go do what you love. So
As long as she's
That's
with
cool.
you, she doesn't care where you take her. Eh? I see. I see. It's just because Valentine's just passed. You're still
yeah.
romantic. I see. You're like, honey, listen to the podcast. I dropped a line for you.
Yeah. There's some points there, hopefully.
You went from pro wrestling to the Coyotes to OKC. So what's a typical day like for you? Like, can you walk us through a typical day in OKC?
Yeah. We can go non-game day versus game day.
Uh,
Non-game
yeah, go
non
do both, I guess, if you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I'll have to keep it quick. Non-game day is really centered around getting everything prepared for the game. So we're going through videos. The trade deadline just happened, so we're looking to see who's in this video that shouldn't be, who needs to be in this video that's not yet. All those like tedious details are being looked at on non-game day. Um, on game day, I work with a group in the Thunder that is responsible for just the in-arena entertainment. So we're called Thunder Vision, and everything that you see on the big board is us. And um, so on game day, I have a little bit different of a process than the rest of my crew, who is up in a control room and dialing in a game day crew with a game log. I am actually getting cameras ready in a media room with other videographers, going through shot lists. We'll start by just collecting gear. What do we want to shoot tonight? What does it need to look like? We have a pretty good variance of lenses. So it's kind of like a game plan of who's going to be where with what lens. And we can plan that because we know who's shooting on which end of the court for which half.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, are those like when you're making these decisions? Is it specifically for what's going live on the scoreboard, or is it for more for like packages that you'll edit later on?
So my group is more for the packages, more for the highlight video. Um, yeah, we're more keen to shooting things like that. Um, Jace, who was on here before, is my boss, and he's coordinating the group of camera shooters who are feeding him live production shots. So um, it's cool to be able to work in both worlds, to talk to camera operators, uh, trade angles, things like that. A lot of those guys that shoot the big shoulder camera, shout out to them. I have no idea how you do that. Uh,
It's tough. It's tough. Let me tell you, it's tough. You got to be really physically strong to be able to do it, and many people can't do it. So
it's older. Like we have older guys too. We have much older gentlemen like down there with big rigs, and I'm like, I'm younger than you are, and I promise you, my back hurts just looking at you carry that.
before we start every show, I complain to E how bad my back hurts. Okay.
It's a thing, man. You get older, it starts happening. But yeah, we've got a large crew in the sense that there's game day operation and us. So I'm lucky enough that I have a spot on the baseline most nights. So that's where I am, and then I coordinate with the other guys of supplemental footage of what we can use. Fan footage is huge to us. So to have somebody directly facing fans and just concentrating on getting reactions is such a tough job. But we've got two guys that just absolutely crush it. Connor and Joshua, they've both come up as interns and have gotten positions at the Thunder, and we must be doing something right with finding them because the two of those guys are really good for us. We get those great crowd reaction shots that supplement the highlight video, so it's not just like I said, like 30 dunks or a bunch of points. Like a lot of the crowd reaction clips is what gives you that directive to the fans of like, it's all right to go crazy right now.
And do you know, like when you're filming, do you have like a specific video in mind that you're shooting for, or is it just more like, okay, we need more this player or that player, or we want to focus more on the fans or whatever the case may be?
Well, I'm lucky to have those guys because then I'm not having to worry about getting those shots, and I can focus on the game. If I didn't have those guys, I wouldn't be able to dial in the way I do during a game. And so my MO during a game is just to shoot what's going on in the game and get that.
And you're covered with different angles of the same play, right? So for some reason, if you miss it or you feel like your angle is not good, you have a backup basically.
Yeah. I mean, we missed a lot. I think not that we're bad at what we do, but there's a referee out there who gets to walk anywhere he wants, and it's in hockey too. So I didn't feel like it was biased and that they're picking on just you. It happens all the time. And so, like you said, that you've got another team shooter on the other side, or you've got someone on a long lens somewhere who got it. And it's nice to know that there's multiple angles because otherwise it'd be a stressful night every night.
Yeah. It's always that should I go to the other side because there's been like 3 or 4 shots that I missed because of him. Like then as soon as the free throw happens, then like
and if you switch, he's gonna move.
Yeah, exactly.
So what's the most challenging part of shooting an NBA game then for you on floor level or courtside? The ref?
Yeah, I'd say the battle with the ref is for sure the number one, issue.
It's not sitting in that legs crossed position that they force you to do in that little white box. That's not the most challenging part.
That's challenging too. We got these little chairs that fold out, so it makes it a little bit easier on your back. It's really nice, but yeah, at about the fourth quarter, you can kind of kiss your legs goodbye. Challenges on the floor, I think that people want to get everything, have this desire to shoot a game. And so if there's this crazy play, they want to be the one who got the shot. And that's just not practical. And you'll go crazy trying to be that one and only get it so often. So I just go off the rule of like, I'm sitting in this box on the floor and I don't have anyone in front of me besides the ref. So I'm at a vantage point that there's no one else in the stadium that has my vantage point. So if I get, let's say, like Isaiah Joe walking towards me to my corner, I'm shooting that low angle hero shot at Isaiah while there's a play going on the right side that's really far away, because it makes more sense for me to get the shot that's right in front of me that looks really good than to try and reach and get that other play that's a great play that somebody else got and has an even better vantage point too. And now matching those two, I think that's where the magic comes from, is having spectacular angles from all around versus one play and 40 angles of it.
Well, that's a good point.
Yeah, it's a very good perspective, because so many people are afraid to miss the action, and it's hard, right? Because like E and I sometimes are solo shooters, so we go to these events and we're shooting stuff, you're shooting B-roll and that, and you're trying to capture as much as you can, but you just kind of simplified it. When you're capturing what's in front of you, you're not really worried what's happening on the other side of the court. You'll use the best shot possible later on in your edit, and just because the guy doesn't have the ball, he could be the best shot at that moment for you, at least. So I like that analogy that you gave. It's a good way to look at it.
Thanks.
It makes me feel like I've been doing it wrong all these years.
No. I'm also short. So like working in the music industry, like shooting concerts and things like that, I learned that really early. It was like, I'm short, but I can get to here. So if I can get here and shoot my spot, it'll work out. I don't need to reach over. But I do have to maneuver and find better places to shoot from, because I'll be honest, being this short, like you get somebody else just a little bit taller than you and it's over.
Well, I feel like that when I stand next to E, because he's like 6'4", so
Yeah.
Well, it's another issue, because then not so much at the professional level, but when you're filming kids, like, you don't want to have that sort of downward sort of angle that makes them look small. So I always have to try to shoot from a lower angle, just to at least be level with the action. So yeah, and then the back problems.
I've got a cool picture of my first media day with Chet and I on the set, and Chet's just casually dribbling the basketball, and I'm reaching like as high as I can with a Ronin, so I've got like an extra 3 feet, and I'm barely like getting eye level. And I love the picture. It's really cool to have, but it just shows the size is way different.
So what other standout moments do you have off the top of your head? Like, do you have a game moment or a shot that you filmed that is like, wow, I really, really enjoyed that moment, or really, really sticks out for you throughout so far in your career?
Yeah, I mean, we were just talking about don't worry about being the guy who gets the shot. But when you are the one, it feels so good. And I was lucky enough to have that experience last year during a regular season game that, I mean, they all matter, but in the scheme of things, it didn't matter a ton. But it was a buzzer beater, J-Dub down the court. I had the everything perfect moment where I'm pulling focus and I'm pulling the zoom and everything's just right. And we need a bucket, and he steps to my lane, which is left. Most guys drive right in the NBA, and he does drive right a lot. But this night he drove left and came right towards me, and no defender, no referee, hit a beautiful fadeaway. And I just loved the follow that I got on it. Fan reactions involved. It was just all around probably one of my better shots of my career. And it was like the one that you go back to the office and you're like, pull it up because I got to show you guys what I got tonight.
It's true. That is the best feeling. And when you're putting that SD card in right away and you have it, and it's just to brag to everyone else, like, here, check out my shot.
Yeah. Save it twice. I always back it up twice too.
I'm sure you have that shot backed up more than twice.
It's on a few drives.
All right. So should we transition to like media days? Like what do media days look like in OKC? Like how early does that process start? How involved are you? And yeah, take us through the day once it happens.
My first year, I kind of was like along for the ride. And the footprint of media day was huge in comparison to what I had experienced in the NHL.
Mm.
So we had 5 or 6 sets, one of them being green screen and one of them being a big video wall.
Good thing is there's less players though, so you get more time with them. No?
Yeah, yeah. Basketball players just have like a characteristic and a swag to them that you don't get from NHL guys. It's just a totally different vibe. They're both really cool, but NBA is like very, you feel like very trended in the moment, pop culture almost. Like especially with our team, who does a lot of the fashion and known for all that. So media day is tough to try and incorporate. Like, how do we take this team's characteristics and unveil them? Like, how do we want to portray our team to fans this year? And so as far as like calculating what media day looks like, it's pretty much, I'd say, like 2 or 3 weeks after the regular season is done. We're always thinking about it, and we have a chat where we drop like inspirational stuff, and that'll like circulate for a while and be on everybody's minds. But really close after regular season, we're starting to dial in what media day looks like, and we have directive from our marketing and branding as far as like the messaging or the tone of what they're looking for and what it needs to say. So like we get those parameters, but then we're allowed to like build inside of them. And so as long as we're hitting all those targets, it's really cool to be creative and figure out what could work for us and what would look different. We consume a lot of other media from teams to look at what's trending, what's hot, what's not. Um, but it's always awesome when you can come up with that organic idea that really ties your brand together and is cool on video. It's awesome when you can hit all those marks. So we're planning for what those sets look like and going out, and I mean, we have a great company that we work with that helps us with lighting and stuff like that. So all that stuff is brought in, and it's either been at the stadium or at like a convention center, but it's a lot of space. And so there's like cryo and lasers. And so we're kind of having to like map out where all those sets are because we have to make it really fast for players to go in, spend 2 minutes, and then jump out because they have a lot of things they have to do that day. So most of our like ideas around creative are built around like we have 3 minutes, what can we do, and then how can we manipulate like in post to make this life set come together and make it look crazy versus just like what are we going to do with the footage after we get it? Is it just that, like, do you just stick it in and don't edit it because it's a bunch of lasers and stuff going off? So it's kind of like you archive all the footage and then we really start dialing in like music and sound effects. And um, we're lucky that we work at the arena, so if we want to test sound and sound effects and music, it's something that we do really early on just because music dictates so much of what's going on in all the videos later on. But um, like I was saying earlier, some of the footage gets bagged for playoffs, and we just have to like keep some things for later and then put some things out right away.
So do you already know before you start shooting like what music you'll use for the hype reel, for example, and things like that?
Sometimes we do. Sometimes there's a really good track that we know we're going to use, or sometimes there's a track that has to be licensed. So like if we have to pay to license it, that process has to start really early. So we'll know about that music. But a lot of our stuff comes from those libraries. And so it's really like I think anyone who's doing video professionally can say that some of the more tedious days are combing those libraries for what actually works. And it's a tough game out there. And then on top of it, there's 90 different people who send you 40 emails every day that want you to go to their service, and it's like I can't even get the one that we have to like, because the music is so important to me. I mean, it can make or break a video right off the bat.
Oh, definitely. And also, if there's a few people that have to approve the music choice, then it becomes even more complicated because
Yeah,
everybody's got
everyone
their
likes
own,
the
you know.
edit note to change the music, right?
Yeah.
So, John, what's your approach then when filming like a hype video versus like a behind the scenes video?
For hype videos, like I know that I have to have some moments that are fast that because that's going to drive the energy, and from a hype video you want high energy, so I imagine I'm going to be showing a lot of clips. Um, Cataloging all of those is important. Um, Having a master log where we go in and put all the clips in by player by play, so that you can go backwards into an edit and pull what you need versus like searching endlessly through melts. Did you ask, were you asking about like the process or?
Yeah, yeah. Like, what's your process between what's your approach when either you're filming a hype compared to what's different when you're doing more behind the scenes pieces?
Okay, yeah. So like the hype stuff, it comes out organically in the game action and all that. Like I'm getting guys that are yelling, that are hustling, sweating, working hard. So those like type of messages that I'm trying to deliver in arena, that we're a hardworking team, um, those seem to relate pretty easily. They come through that footage very easily. Like something behind the scenes, I would want to be either teasing what we're shooting or giving like real characteristic to the team that is making the the visual that's going to be on the other end of it. So I'd say it'd be more centered around like I would shoot videographers and them with cameras in hand, and really give people like the taste of what it's like to be in some of the production rooms and studios when these things are happening, versus like just knowing that I need the hottest footage possible and as much of it as I can get for a hype video. I think it's just more of trying to get people to relate to the people who are in the video and what are they doing.
You mentioned before that one of the things you pride yourself on is quick turnarounds, and that's how it kind of helped you get in this business. So what tips do you have for doing a quick turnaround? So like I just did a shoot, I gotta give my client something as soon as possible. How do you kind of maneuver that, or what are your tips to get that video out as fast as possible? Because it is something that people do struggle with a lot.
I think for me, I love this so much that whether I have to delete, like let's say the project isn't due for a month and I just got home shooting it, just my like own drive, I want to see what that footage looks like right away. So like I'm at home either coloring it or at least archiving it and organizing it so that when it needs to be used. I would say if you can do that as close as you can to after shooting something is so important because it's fresh on your mind. You were just there. You remember the moments. You remember things that you're not going to remember 2 weeks down the road when you go and open this footage back up. And I also realized that you're so much more excited about the footage when you're working on it right away. If I leave footage, the longer I leave it, the less I care to touch it. And so to get it in there and get it going right away, I think is ultimately the name of the game. I think the other name of the game is you have to pick a stop line where you're going to say, this video will never be perfect, but it is where I like it. I like where it is and it's professional, and I could charge for this video. Because you could go back to any video that you've made, look at it and say, these could be better. And, we could all sit down and revise every video until, you don't have any more time. And it's like, at some point, put the video up. Put it up. If it's something that's like important for corporate, make sure it's what they needed and they're getting what they need. If it's something personal and you're worried about what it looks like, if it's like put it up, learn from it. Like some of the stuff that I learned the most from were videos that like long form videos in a series of documentaries that I know where there's some hiccups. And it's like, but learning that that's something to look for in pre-production and things that I can do on the other end of production that helps out. So you never get that experience if you never post, or if you never let your stuff live.
Yeah. Well, especially that there's always a next one, so you can't dwell on this one because there's another one coming
That's
next
the
week.
main reason that that we all flip videos so fast, because we don't have
Yeah.
time to take in another project into the queue. Like, get it out of the queue before we're on to the next. Totally.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
couldn't agree more.
That was funny
And
because you're not excited about it anymore too. Once it sits there for a month or two, you're like, oh, you forget, and it makes sense. Just do it right away, get it over with. Yeah, it sucks, but you're more excited about the project at that moment, for sure, for sure.
Well, I was just gonna ask, like, when you talk about organizing, is that something that you do after every shoot, especially like games? Like, do you go through all the footage and identify, like B-roll shots that you like that, yeah, will be relevant to a hype reel down the line, and you sort of mark everything, or
I'm definitely marking clips. And I do it old school, where if I get a good play or whatever, I'm either shooting like a black frame, or I shoot the blue court, so it's just blue checks to know where those are. And then luckily, like we're on like Sony FX3 on the court, just naming your file footage before a game or like before a shoot is huge. If you can remember to go in and name your shoot, it makes your file structure really easy. So we have a nomenclature that we all go by, and it's just nice to go into the servers and search and find exactly what you're looking for.
so basically you know which game it is when which camera and like all these things.
Yeah, and like I have other tools that I can pinpoint, because when I get all my footage, it's a list of 1 through 200 of clips, and so it's not telling me obviously what those clips are. But we have Clip Pro, and it's just you're able to go on, pull up a full game, go through every highlight, and I can see where in a game something happened, and then go to my footage, get relatively close, and pull that.
Do you try to time, like, you can set like a time code in your camera, and like, do you try to time it to the clock or something so that it's easier to find moments?
My boys at the Coyotes were really good at that. I'm not a math guy, so it really scares me. I avoid the time code, but I've seen it used, and it's very efficient.
Well, if you can have all cameras synchronized to the same time code, and because if you're gonna have multiple angles of the same play, that's always a
Yeah.
huge time saver in
Yeah,
post.
for sure.
But it is more complicated to set up.
Do you have a player feature or a video that you did that really stands out for you, that you're really, really proud of, that you would look at and you're like, I don't need to change anything. This one, this is perfect, or as close to perfect as you think?
I did a piece for Clayton Keller, 21-22 for the All-Star game. And it played during the All-Star game, during his like intro. So that was cool, because that was one where they said, like, do your style of editing. And I was like, I don't even know what my style is, but here we go. And it was just like a project that I had complete creative control over. And I got to see it in the arena in Florida. So I was really proud of that. And that was one that I got a lot of people asking me, like, how did you do that? And can you show us this? And I was like, all right, I did something creative that other people liked. And it was like, I really liked getting that love from the other creative people that I looked up to.
Should we talk a little bit about gear? Like you mentioned few seconds ago that you use an FX3 during games. Is that like pretty much everybody on your team? Are you all Sony? Are you all FX3 cameras? Do you use gimbals? Like, what's the usual?
There's multiple video teams within the Thunder, and it's kind of funny because we are Sony and the other group is Canon.
Is the big rivalry there?
Yeah, well, and now that we're collaborating on more projects, everybody's very aware of what color space is coming from each camera. So,
Is it tough to match?
It's
Is
a
it hard
dogfight.
to?
I love coloring footage. It's my favorite thing to do in an edit, so that challenge is always fun to me. I don't think it's too hard to get our cameras to sync up. That being said, we're doing completely different things when we're coloring our footage. Like because we're Sony, we're pulling out a lot of green. Um, I'm doing a lot of desaturation from the Canon cameras. So without being biased, um, they're both great and they match color well. But we do shoot on the FX3s, and those are new to us last year. And I had learned those in Phoenix, so I felt pretty confident about bringing those over to the Thunder. And um, I like it as a baseline shooter being handheld. I can, at the end of a game, jump up and be in a scrum or be in another place that's easy to get and easy to maneuver. I love the FX6. I think that's the next jump for us is to get something on the shoulder with really good audio capability. So we have two FX3s and a bunch of old cameras. Sometimes the A7 IIIs come out when we need that extra camera. But we're looking to kind of migrate towards the higher end of cameras. So right now we're shopping with Red, and they're very appealing, but also the hefty cost that comes with some of the higher end cameras. So the FX3s allow us to get great cinematography. We get awesome cinematic footage on the court. I mean, in any environment, that camera is really turning visuals into a movie. It's amazing. So it's nice to have something in your hand that does that.
And do you shoot in high frame rates or?
Yeah, so for game action, I'm shooting 4K 120, and I usually have my shutter speed around 500, just because that's giving you that like slow motion bead of sweat coming off, and you can see, some of those nice details come out with the higher shutter speed. And the FX3 has the base ISO, which is so good, the dual base ISO. So I'm at 128 on the court, and even though that seems like really bright, with the ND filter and everything on there dialed back, and the shutter speed as fast as it is, it looks like butter at some point. It's just really nice to look at.
And what lenses are you guys using typically?
So I'm typically using a 70 to 200 on the court. For our fan stuff and fan reactions, we're using either a 16 to 35 to show you the entire arena, which is really important. I think that shot gets lost in a lot of videos to show the immense size and environment of the arena. So we're using wide lenses to show that, and then a 24 to 70 to get just the basic portrait of a fan. And then on the other side, with more of the game action, we have I want to say it's a 100, it's a 70 to 600. And so that's really fun, especially on nights where like we'll have a triple broadcast. So TNT, NBA, and local TV needs camera spots on the baseline, and it kind of like waxes everybody else out. So it's nice to have that 600 go up into the 100 concourse level and still be able to like frame here. It's pretty incredible. Yeah.
It's funny you say that because people don't realize when you work in house, like I work in house, broadcasters are constantly trying to bump you, or like we'll create camera positions that don't even exist on the camera map, and and they see you and they're like, "Oh, we want that position." Like they always want more, and they always jockeying for position. You're like, "No, this is my spot. Like leave me alone, buddy."
That's so true. You guys must have like your own secret world, because there's one guy, and every once in a while when it's really packed out and there's no spots, uh, he'll give me like a wink or like, "Hey man, I think there's one over here. I can finagle for you." So
Well, hockey's tricky too as well because you've got there's so many spots you can shoot from, like where other sports, at least basketball, I guess you can kind of move around, like as a not a big camera, big body camera, but like a more of a ISO videographer. You can sort of move around and try to get an angle. It's a bit different. Maybe it's from the crowd. Maybe you get some crowd in the foreground as well to give it like a different perspective. And it's always fun to play with these things. But yeah, some sports are harder to do that, because if you try to do that in hockey, you get the crowd in the front, but then there's the plexiglass, and then by the time you get to the action, it doesn't look that great.
That glass, man, it's
Yeah.
a blessing and a curse. Like, I was shooting hockey, and like you said, you end up shooting a lot of higher angles with hockey just to try and get over that glass. But um, I always thought if I could just get into basketball when I was in hockey, if I could just get into basketball, there's no glass in between me and the play. What a beautiful shot that would be, and oh, how I would just love it. And
And then the refs.
and then I got to NBA, and I got to the preseason game, and I took a ball to the lens, and it dusted my lens. I mean, it's done. Like, lens is done. And I remember thinking, like, where is the barrier of glass to protect me now that I hated so much?
Yeah, that is a football is another one as well, where you can sometimes you feel like, okay, I'm finally in the perfect position. Like if they tend to pass to that guy a lot, I'm on his side, it's going to be awesome. Then you do get the shot, but then you hear people around you running, and then you're like, okay, he's coming straight at me, and it's like he's closer, because sometimes you're looking through the lens, you assume that he's further than it looks, but then you look up, and you're like, oh, it's coming. Then I got to run and miss the shot, basically.
So how many injuries does your crew get a year with all these basketballs hitting them while they're breaking lenses and stuff? A lot of equipment down at the end of the season.
Luckily, then that was a pretty unique situation. I mean, um, mine was just a freak moment in the game where a steal had come from behind and poked the ball out towards my camera. And it was like, that's kind of a situation that was hard to anticipate. More often than not, and after that experience, I got better at like you were talking, of kind of like feeling the environment and like, what can I hear that's a lot closer than I may believe that I'm seeing through the viewfinder. And I've actually gotten to the point where it has to be a mixture of looking at the game and coming back to the viewfinder. It can't be just one or the other, because I think that's how you get into a little bit of trouble. But I think most of our guys are super aware. We haven't had anything crazy. I'll take a $2,500 lens in the garbage over actual bodily injury all day. So every game there's a prayer. We do a prayer in Oklahoma City, and you can bet during that prayer I am saying my own prayer that everything goes smooth. So
It's something else you have to think about, right? Like injury and stuff like that. Like you're assuming everyone assumes like, oh, we're filming sports, it's so fun, but you're so close to the action and so fast paced that anything can happen and injuries can happen. So it's kind of neat that you guys take a prayer and take the moment to realize like, hey, let's get out of here safe. Let's enjoy ourselves, because a lot of people, they don't think of that when they think of sports videography.
yeah, and you see in the NBA, it happens, and I'm curious to see what they do about it, because it is getting to the point where the game has gotten so fast that those escape lanes that were far enough back, I would I would guess that those were made 40, 50 years ago. Just the template of how the basketball court is laid out and where those people are. And it just seems like the game is getting faster to where we may need to look at what can we do to protect players and videographers and cameramen, camera operators.
Yeah, and fans as well. Fans are pretty close too.
Yeah, they're catching, missed passes and stuff during the game, and I'm like, wow, you're in it. So we'll see if they do anything. I don't imagine that in the next 10 years you see anything, but maybe there's, some rumblings of potentially moving those spots back or figuring out something different. We're getting into a new stadium in the next 4 years here, and it's nice to be a part of that and talk about what those vantage points look like for videographers so that we can not only like sell the ticket and make everyone like get as many people in there, but like what can we also do for production? Where can we put things that give us a spot to see and still out of the way? So it'll be interesting to see how that comes about too.
Well, I think like when you talk about vantage points, like it's, we always want to see the angle we've, almost never seen before. So like when broadcast, like typical TV broadcast was our only access to professional sports, it was always the same thing. It was more like from, looking down and then maybe front on, things like that. And then from like video become more and more of a thing, then we got more of a downward, like an upward, angle that makes the players look bigger and makes you feel like you're part of the action, and it's a lot more intense and things like that. So we've done a lot of that in the last, I don't know, 10 years or so. I think eventually this is going to become the norm, and then there's going to be a lot more of that, going back higher up, or well, which already is, but I mean, we'll look at different angles, just so maybe we'll move around, not even for security reasons, but just for try something different and just give a different perspective and just sort of mix it up a little bit.
I saw the NBA last night was testing some robotic cameras. So they're actually like almost like RC cars on the floor. And that was interesting because, those are cameras that are getting great shots and they're so low to the ground that they don't disrupt any of the broadcasts. It'll be interesting to see if that's something like you're saying, is that an upward trend? Is that, hopefully not, but
Yeah, it's a bit tricky. You don't want people to lose their jobs and be replaced by that.
At Four Nations Cups, they installed that flyby cam, so it's on like on rails, like it's like wires, right? And it's actually two camera operators, because it's one guy who actually controls the camera itself, and one guy who controls the actual mechanism that moves it around the stadium. So some jobs take away, some jobs add. I guess it depends on what it is, But like even that remote, if you're driving that little remote car, well, you can't control the camera probably at the same time. So you never know. But they do definitely give shots like the Four Nations Cup. That shot over the crowd that was swinging by where you could follow the play was lights out. Like I love that shot. I thought it looked beautiful.
I think ultimately, maybe not in the next 10 years or even on our lifetime, or well, working lifetime anyway, but like eventually cameras will just be, like just like 360 cameras, that there'll be like 6-10 of them, whatever, strategically positioned, and they'll be able to cover everything. So people like us will just be in the control room with joysticks and just do it all from there.
Playing video games.
Yeah, pretty much. Just like what drones are today to the military, like just that sort of transition where you're not in the action anymore. You're just in front of a screen and you do it all. Yeah, I think that's probably where it's going, but not right now.
Yeah.
So John, I'll ask you a question. So we get asked this a lot. For someone starting out, what should they invest in? A camera or a lens? What's the better investment there?
Like you already have a camera.
Yeah, like you want to upgrade your equipment. What are you better off to go get the newest camera or go get a new piece of glass? What would you do when you were starting out? Because honestly, I'm very impressed that you started out with a GoPro. Like honestly, because I have my GoPros and they're always like my backup cameras or like for that, and I couldn't even think about filming half the stuff I do with the GoPro. I know I could. It's just I never done it before. So I was very, very impressed when you said that's how you started off.
I think that's what makes the question a little bit difficult to answer for me. It would be, I would say the camera would be my first choice, in the sense that if you're upgrading a camera, you're probably getting either from 1080 to 4K, or you're probably either getting a little bit more quality, some more megapixels. Why I didn't choose the lens was because I think that if you can use what you have, it trains you to the moment when you have all the gear. So like if you only have a 50 millimeter lens, which you should have, I think you should start with a 50 if you don't have any lens. And that's not going to get you the crazy tight footage that we get at a Thunder game. and it's also not going to get you this big wide landscape. But what it's going to do is it's going to force you as a camera operator to move your position so that the frame looks the way that you want it. And even though you don't have a 16 to 35, well, guess who's hiking a little bit farther to get everything in frame? You are. But now you know that you could shoot that shot with a 50. You know what it looks like with a 50. And now all the variances come from your base knowledge of knowing that one lens. So I say just get a lens and go for it. It doesn't have to be anything specific, but you don't need even two lenses to be a professional videographer.
There's no perfect lens. There's no perfect camera. It's just whatever your needs are. You figure out what your biggest pain point is and try to resolve that, and then build on that with the next pain point and solve that issue.
I mean, I think it's more important to have your home editing station. And I say home because if you're freelancing, then you can do it there. But if you're working, home's a great place to be able to be creative too. Building your home, like I try to make sure this is a place that I want to create and that I like. And that comes down to making sure that the equipment is what it needs to be. And so when you're editing 4K, 8K footage, you're talking about a pretty expensive piece of machinery. And so I say invest in your edit, invest in all the things that it takes to deliver a final product as far as editing, because you could rent a camera for $100 a day and have your footage. I think the bigger play, your higher asset if your editing is so much stronger than your shooting.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. We don't really talk about better computers and things, and also just from a perspective of, like, say, if you're going to 8K, like I edit on the MacBook Pro M1 Max, and I've never had, since I got it, any issues with lagging or anything like that. But recently, Sony lent me a A1 Mark II. I started filming in 8K, and for the first time, lagging became an issue. And I was like, oh, this is things that, there's certain things. Well, I had the same issue when I first bought my FX3. Like, all of a sudden, shooting in 4K 120, now I got to get a new computer. So it's all these things that you need to, it's not just the camera. It's going to affect other things. And then you're going to have to buy all these other things. So, yeah, if the computer is pretty much the place where it all happens. So if the computer is frustrating you, if it's slowing you down, if it's making the editing not fun, it's definitely not where you want to be when you're a sports videographer.
That's what I did when I bought my last computer. As soon as I started lagging, and then it was time. You get to a point where it's time to change, and then when you change, you say, okay. We talked about this in our last episode. Is it let's future proof it? So let's go and let's get the more RAM. Let's get the bigger chip now. Yes, the price tag is higher, but I know when I move on to heavier projects, I'm good. So
yeah, I don't want to have to buy another computer again next time I shoot on a better camera.
Yeah, exactly. 5-year plan with that computer, and you're good. 5 years, you want to update it. There'll be something new out. Max, I don't know. Max M1, M10.
M10 will be out.
Yeah.
So speaking of future and all that, how has NBA content changed since over the years, or since you've been there?
I'm a diehard NBA. Like, basketball was always my favorite as a kid. So I think the difference between like the media that I was getting from the earlier NBA generation to now is like, now I can go along with Shea on a video where we create his signature shoe, or a trip to New York on an away game. The video is allowing you to follow those moments and be really a part of an athlete's journey. Whereas previously, as a kid, we were kind of like so starstruck by a lot of these players because that's all they ever were insane athletes, and we looked up to them for what we saw on TV and in the game. You got so little of the personal aspect of a player that now in this generation, I think for any sport organization, whether it's the NBA, NHL, NFL, I think the name of the game is like, how can you curate content that is towards your brand, but also giving an inside look at these guys' lives and what do they do? Like we're talking about now, what do you do on a regular day? What does your day look like? Fans are interested in that. And I think ultimately those type of views are what turn viewers into ticket buyers, season ticket buyers, lifelong fans. It's just something that, if you use it right, can be such a great tool to show off, the characteristic of your team.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And even for the players, I think it helps them as well sort of become household names and eventually make more money, becoming sort of more popular and being known outside of their market because they got that, that brand that's being known around the league and that people enjoy. And because if we don't know who you are, especially it's a bit less the case like for team sports, but when you're looking at individual sports, it's all about sponsors and things like that. So if we don't know who you are, like it's not going to be the same. Like if you're looking at fighters or tennis players, like if you're a star outside of the court or the ring, it makes a huge difference. And that's where we come in.
I think that Full Swing documentary, that Netflix Full Swing, I'm not a golf fan. I do golf, enjoy golfing, but not like tuning in on Sunday to see who wins. And I found myself doing that after I saw that show because I was like, I like
You're
Brooks
invested now.
Koepka. Yeah,
Yeah.
I like his house, and he's a cool
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah, no, exactly. So do you have any advice for like young sports videographers? Like let's say just from like an editing perspective, like is there like any either like mistakes that you see a lot, like or that you've done a lot when you started that you think would be easy to avoid, or is there just like a path that you would suggest for someone who's starting and trying to figure out not only their style but their way to potentially doing this professionally?
Yeah, I think one of the number one mistakes that younger generation videographers are making right now is using social media to show and tell you what an edit should look like or what's cool and what isn't. Um, like a lot of the college sports, they have a lot of young talent that are invested in making their content. And it's really cool to watch these young kids that are just in school making these insane SEC spots, and just some of the stuff's incredible. LSU goes crazy if you haven't seen. They're unreal. But I think one thing that people are doing is looking at those videos and taking the exact things that they're doing in those videos and just redoing them in another video. And it's to the point where now if I pull up an Instagram and I look up college football edits, I'm seeing the same editing trick throughout all of those edits. And it's a sick trick. They're awesome. But it's just so like uniform across the board that at a point it's like I've seen two of those and I like LSU's and I'm good on everything else. And so I think just not looking at those and thinking that, that's what being creative is. It's This is such a wide range video. You can do anything with it. I mean, we've seen that with green screen now. It's like in your bedroom, you can make an amazing Academy Award winning shot, and there's nothing that, the production just keeps getting less and less for what you have to do to get these shots. And so I think it's just important to know that like you need to get out and do what you think is cool. You need to use the music that you like. And it doesn't matter if it's trending or if it's popular. uh, Rick Rubin wrote a book, The Creative Act. I think anyone making anything creative needs to pick it up. But it just talks about how we've gotten into such a spot of trying to say, okay, these are my fans. We're at a basketball game. I think I know what they want to hear, feel, and see. And so we're going to curate all that to be directive and show them cheer, fun, basketball, crazy. If you take a step back and you start curating content that's for you, and this sounds super selfish, but if you are creating something that you personally love, and it's all the elements of things that you like, whether it's, the color, or I used to put like actual movie clips in my edits because I wasn't getting dinged on YouTube. Like, it's just those things that you like that you can bring to the forefront that are you, that are the creative part of the process. Um, and then no one could judge, because at the end of the day, if you made it for you and it goes somewhere where somebody else sees it, or 10 people have an opportunity to see it, not all 10 are going to love it, but one person is going to notice something and go, man, that was incredible. And that's what it's for. Like, that's what video is for. That's how you make an insane, awesome video, is you make it cool for you. And there are people that are having the same human experience as you. You just don't believe it. And those are your tribe. Like, those are the people that are going to love what you're putting out. And more often than not, if you love it, it's great. I really believe that. If you don't love it, I really think it sucks too. But you have to believe in what you're doing, and really love what you're doing, or else you could run circles in this industry.
Yeah.
Listen, I think you just sold some books with that speech, so we'll have to put an Amazon affiliate link under this to sell some books. So, John, before we let you go, I got one more question for you. What advice would you give someone who's trying to land a videographer job in the NBA?
You don't need professional athletes. You don't need to shoot professional athletes to show that you are the caliber of a videographer to work in that industry. To elaborate, if you do want to work in sports, go to where you have access. We all live next to a local high school that has a football team, a basketball team. There are places that you can go to shoot. And really, if you want to shoot basketball, you can shoot basketball. It may not be a Thunder game right away, but I promise that anything that you would do on a game night at a local high school would be very similar to what your MO would be on a night in the NBA. So
that's some good advice. That's good advice. Well, listen, John, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be on the show. Now, we would like to have you and Chile back when you guys are NBA champions. So
say less.
So when the Thunder win the championship this year, will you and Chile please come back on the show so we could just talk about NBA finals, talk about your ring you're getting, all that fun stuff?
We would love to be back no matter what the outcome of our season is.
All right. Well, thank you so much, John, for being on this episode. And that's it for this episode of Game Day Glare. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, yeah.